Hi guys, welcome to today's tutorial on how to edit multiple photos on the iPhone with the Batched app. If you ever wanted to edit your photos on the iPhone fast and easily, stay tuned. Hello, my name is Amelie Satzger. I'm a photographer and digital artist, and I create surreal, colorful images which I also often shoot and edit with my iPhone. My images have already been exhibited worldwide, such as in New York, Paris, and in a worldwide shot and edited on iPhone campaign from Apple. In this video, I'll show you the main features and tools of Batched and how to use it. Batched is the perfect app for multi-photo editing. So to demonstrate you what it actually can do, I'm just loading unedited photos into the app from a fashion series I shot a while ago. So I'm just swiping over the images and selecting all of the images I want to have selected, and then go on select on the right bottom here. And now all of the images are loaded into the app. So now that we are in the app, you can see that we have a lot of different functions down here. So we have light, color, details, transform, color transfer, filters, object removal, clone stamp, color standout, duotone, split tone, selective view, and curve. So you have so many options to edit your image. Firstly, I would just go into the light and just see what I can enhance in these images with the light. So you can see we have all the regular tools here, which you probably already know if you have edited your images before. So we can increase or decrease the exposure, we can change the contrast, highlights, shadows, whites and blacks. So for these images, the exposure was already set perfectly while I shot, but I want to increase the contrast a little bit, and I want to maybe make the shadows a little brighter. So I actually want the images to have a really warm, filmy look. So they should look a little vintage, as they may already, because of the wallpaper and of this really old aesthetic which is already in the images. But I want to enhance that with editing them in the right way in this app. So for that, I would, as I just said, increase the shadows. I would maybe also increase the whites a little bit. So what you can do to edit the images in a better way, in a more controlled way, you can actually go on one of the images. So I'm just clicking on this image, for example, and then I can see what it actually does a little better than just in the whole overview. So I'm increasing the whites a little bit, and I'm decreasing the black so it's more contrasty, and maybe increase the highlights a little bit. So you can see what it did here when I just click on this little icon up here, and it already enhanced the whole image. So we're going to go back and look at all of the other images, and maybe you already see that some of the images were shot a little bit brighter and some were a little bit more dark. So what I would do, and what is really cool in this app, is that I would go on the images that are, in my opinion, a little too bright now because of the editing we just did, and I would delink them. So you can see this little icon here. If it is linked, all of the other images as well are getting edited. But you can delink it, and this way you can actually make really specific edits for one of these photos. So for this photo, for example, I would just decrease the whites a little bit. I would decrease the highlights a little bit, so it's not that bright and not overly bright. Maybe I would increase the contrast. This is how it looked before, and this is how it looks now. And then when you're finished with editing this one image, you can link it again, and it will again be edited with all of the images together in the next steps. You can see all of the images look really like one body of work now. As the second step for editing this photo series, I would go into color, and you can see we have different functions here again, which you probably maybe already know as well. So we can change the hue, we can change the temperature, we can change the tint, we can increase the saturation or the vibrance. So what I would do is I would increase this vibrance a little bit in these images, and as I want the images to have a really warm, filmy look, I just increase the temperature a little bit as well. Around that, So next we're going in the details, and to show you a bit better what is happening here, I just go on one of the images and then you can see it much better. So with sharpen, you just sharpen the image. So I would like to sharpen the image a little bit, and you can see it really sharpens it quite well. I would go around 24%, and as it should have a like little washed out filmy look, I would add a little bit of grain. So you can see if I add a lot, it's like really pixely, but I would like to have a little bit of grain in these images to make it look really like filmy and old. So there are 2 or 3 other tools I would love to use for editing these set of images. The first tool I really admire are the filters. So there are so many different filters. You can just try out which one fits best to your kind of images. I just really like, as I said, to have a really filmy look. So I'm gonna go on film and use the first filter, and you can see it's maybe a little extreme, so you can decrease the opacity maybe to 50%, and now they have a really nice film look, and I really love like this yellowish greenish tone which all of the images now got. And the last tool I would use to edit this set of images now is selective hue. I love selective hue, and you can see you can change different tones with the selective hue. So you can change the red tones, orange tones, yellow tones, green tones, cyan, blue, pink and violet tones. So you have a lot of different functions. You have to be a little bit careful with the selective hue if you're editing with multiple photos at once, as obviously in some photos there are like more orange tones and other ones there are like more greenish tones or blue tones. So what I would do is I would go in one of the images, maybe in this one, and I would adjust it as good as possible and then see how good it fits to any of the other images, and then delink them and edit them as well. So I'm just quickly gonna do it. So let's see. So now I have a really nice look for all of the images. And one more thing I wanted to show you for the multiple photo editing is, for example, here you can see there was some assistant in the back of the image, and I can really easily retouch this person out with the object removal tool. And even though I have like this image linked to all of the other images, if I use the object removal, the clone stamp, or any of these really specific tools for one image, it will not apply to any of the other linked images. So I would just go in with the clone stamp, and I just go in here. I use this area as a reference area, and then I just paint in here and just remove this person really easily. I can also make the brush size a little bigger. So I just use this as a reference area, and I just paint in and remove this person. And now it looks like a little weird in here, so I would go in with the object removal tool one more time and just making it smoother with the object removal tool. And now you can't see that there was anybody standing here. You can see this was the before, this is the after photo of this image, and in none of the other images there is anything happening with the clone stamp or object removal tool. So these tools are only applying to the images you're using it with. And here you can see now how all of the images turned out. They all have a really warm film look. I really love it, and it was so fast and easy to edit them with the Batched app. So now that you got an idea how the Batched app can help you to edit multiple photos in the best way, let's have a look at all of the other tools the Batched app has for you. So for that, I just opened this image, and we're going to have a closer look at the object removal tool. The object removal tool is the perfect tool to remove anything from your images which you don't want to have inside. It includes the same algorithm as the Touch Retouched app, which is #1 on the market for removing objects right now. So let's have a look how it works. So for example, I want to remove the numbers in the water slides here. So I'm on my object removal tool. I have a brush size. You can also change the brush size from really like tiny to really big. And I'm just choosing a middle-sized brush, and I'm just brushing on the number, and it just removes the number without leaving any trace. So I'm doing this exact same thing here with this number. So I'm just painting in the 6, and it removes the 6 without leaving any trace. So it's super simple, super intuitive, and it does a really, really good job. So let's remove the 3 here as well. And this is basically how the object removal tool works. Now let's have a look at the clone stamp tool and what is different from the object removal tool. So the clone stamp tool actually doesn't make any objects disappear really magically, but you can have a lot of control with the clone stamp tool. So you can choose a reference area inside of your image, so you can choose which area should be the reference for whatever you want to do. Then you can choose a brush size, a different opacity, a hardness of the brush. So I'm choosing a really soft brush, and edge awareness. So it actually realizes where there are edges in the image. And then you can choose an area, and you can remove things you want to have removed with this area. Or, which is even more interesting, you can choose how it should be brushed onto the area you're brushing it to. So you can say no mirroring, so it just copies it exactly the same way as it is on the other area you're painting into. It can mirror it horizontal, vertical, and diagonal. So I'm choosing horizontal now, and I'm choosing this person as a reference area. So I'm making the brush size a little bit more tiny. I'm choosing this foot as a reference area, and then I'm painting in here and just copying the same person on the other water slide. So I'm just painting, I'm maybe making my brush a little bigger, and I'm just copying this person on the other water slide, as you can see. If you painted too much in an area, you can also erase it. So you can also change the brush size of the eraser, and then you can go in, and I'm just erasing all of the yellow so it actually looks natural. And also up here. And now you use the clone stamp to copy the same person in the same image, and it looks really fun and creative. Another tool I really love in the Batched app is the color standout, and it's really easy, really simple, and really effective. So you can see what it does in this image. I'm just gonna go on the color standout, and I would love to have like more focus on the girl with the red dress. So I'm gonna go on red, and you can see it just desaturates all of the other colors in the image and just leaves the red in the image. So you have two functions here. You have the range and the opacity. With the range, you can actually choose what tones of red should be actually still saturated. And with the opacity, you can just say, okay, I don't want to have the other colors desaturated that much. I just want to have them in an opacity of maybe 35. If you have like 100, all of the other colors are black and white. So I would go on like 50 and have a range pretty much like this. So it's only the dress which is selected. Another feature in the Batched app which can make your image stand out even more is the duotone. If you go on duotone, you can see that you have already a couple of presets. For example, this one I really love for this image. And you can also go on here and say, okay, I want the opacity to be like 50% or just 100, however you love it best. If you want to, you can also create your own preset in duotone and select two colors you really love to have in the image. For example, here I can just maybe choose some kind of pinkish tone and a really nice orangey. And you can see I just created a new duotone. So you can see it's really easy, and it can really help you to make your picture, ad or website look different and attractive. Another amazing tool in Batched is the color transfer. The color transfer makes it possible for you to just choose any images you can find in the internet and put the same look on your images. I'm gonna show you how it works with this image. So you have two options here. You can either search for any image you really love from the look in Unsplash. So for example, I'm just gonna search for beach here and just find any beach photo I really love from the colors. So for example, I really love this one, and it applies the same look on this photo. So you can see it's really bright. The sand also looks like this yellowish, and it's just like a filter but from other images. The second option is if you go on plus, you can choose any image from your photo library. So I'm, for example, choosing this image of mine, and it applies the look from this image on this image. And you can see it looks really, really different to the original version of the photo, and it looks really different to this filter, as it looks really bright and really beachy, and this looks a little bit more saturated, darker. So it's a really great tool if you already have images which you really love from the style, and you can just apply the style to any other image as well. And lastly, let's edit this single image together and have a look at all of the other tools we haven't used yet. So in this image, for example, I firstly would also go on the light. As always, I would increase the highlights a little bit, the shadows a lot. Then on color, I would just increase the vibrance a little bit. And then you can see there is the transform tool. The transform tool is for transforming the image, obviously. So here, for example, it's pretty much like horizontal, the lines, but not quite. So I can just, you can see I can rotate the image and cut it in a different way. So I just go like this, like a tiny little bit rotated. And you can see you can also rotate it clockwise or counterclockwise. You can flip the image horizontally or vertically. You can skew the image, which is actually really interesting, and especially interesting for people with architecture photography. So you can actually skew the image, you can change the aspect ratio, and you can have like different grids, which is also really interesting if you have an image where you want any of the composition rules to apply to. I'm fine with that now, so I just basically rotated the image a little bit, and now I'm gonna go on the split tone, and in the split tone you can choose which colors the highlights and the shadows should have. So in this image, for example, I would like the highlights to be orangey, as the highlights are especially like the skin tones here, and I think in orange or in like yellowish orange it would look really natural. The shadows instead, I would love to have like this bluish tone in the shadows. So I would choose here the cyan tones for the shadows, and you can see they also like brighten up the shadows a little bit. So this tool is really helpful if you want to edit the shadows and the highlights separately. Then I would go on a selective view again, and I would increase the red tones a little bit. I would make them definitely a little bit more orangey like this. I would also go on the blue tones, and I would definitely make them more cyan and make them more saturated as here as well. So kind of like this, and maybe make them even a little brighter. And the scars around the heads are a little bit pinkish as well. So I would also go in the pink tones and saturate them and make them a little bit more orangey. So this is what I would do in the selective view. You can see it already changed really drastically. And lastly, I would go on the curves, and the curves are perfect for probably anything, but you can also use other tools for that. But basically here you can increase the contrast, decrease the contrast, change the color of the highlights, of the shadows, etc. So for example here, I firstly would maybe increase the contrast a little bit. I'm doing that by like making the highlights a little higher and the shadows a little darker. Then you can also go into the red tone. So if you increase the red tones, like the red is gonna go up and if you decrease them, it's gonna put more cyan in that. So if you know complementary colors, cyan is a complementary color of red, yellow is a complementary color of blue, and magenta is a complementary color of green. So this is what applies here. If you decrease red, they're gonna be more cyan. If you increase red, there's obviously gonna be more red. In green, if you decrease green, magenta is coming in your image, or if you increase green, there is green coming in your image, and in blue it's yellow. So pretty simple. And here, like over here are like all the highlights, and over here are all the dark areas. So if you increase the blue here, you're increasing the blue in the highlights, and if you're decreasing blue, you're putting more yellow in the highlights. Pretty simple, but I actually really like the image as it is right now. So I'm not changing the shadows and the highlights again, because I already did this with split tone. So I just increase the contrast a little bit here in the curves. So you can see this is how it looked before, and this is how we edited it in the Batched app. And now the last thing I want to show you is you can export it in different versions. So you can choose if you want to export it in JPEG, TIFF, HEIC, PNG, and if you want to have the size small, medium, large, or the original size. You can also save it as a copy, so it just saves it as a separate image on your camera roll, or modify original, so it copies over the original image you actually loaded into the app. I always save it as JPEG, so you can also say none because it already was a JPEG, original size, and save as copy. And lastly, if you're like me and you already have a really specific workflow in editing your images, this is for you, as you can actually change the position of any of the tools by just typing on them and swiping them over wherever you want them to be. So for example, I always use selective view. I would love to have it in the front of all of my tools, so you can just move all of the tools around, which is really amazing. Also, if you're editing multiple photos at once, you can also go on the settings here and choose if you want to have 3 images in a row or 2 images in a row. So I rather prefer 3 images in a row, but you can change it however you want to. So for example, if you want to have 2 images in a row, it looks obviously like this. There will be new updates and tools coming up in the future, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact our support here, or just write a comment down here underneath the YouTube video and we will be happy to help. I hope this tutorial helped you and you're now creating awesome images with the Batched app. Bye!